Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Happy
Feels
Friday.
like deja vu.
We had a small technical hitch where we thought we were live and we weren't. So we've already done this once. But anyway, there we are. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation. This week, we're going to be reviewing or looking back on the brand launch event that you had last week, Ben, which was great. But as always, let's start with the news. So let's start with the continuing saga of the CEO position at Lloyd. So as of today, 12 noon, still no news on who that would be. And this article here in the insurance business newsletter, with Chris Croft writing about some of the attributes that he would like to see from the new CEO, whoever that's going to be, but also on some of the things that they should and shouldn't be focusing on when they start in position. And I think it was quite interesting to read that one of the things he cautioned against was a kind of root and branch look at the blueprint initiative. And what I think he says in this article is that what we don't need is consultants coming in and telling us what's wrong with the blueprint and then perhaps rebadging it as something else and then continuing with the work. What we need to do is to get it over the line, and then we can look towards the future. But as far as I know, there's still no detail on the timeline or who it might be, unless, Ben, you've got any insights you can.
No, there isn't. I think they have headhunters out in the market at the moment, and there are internal candidates as well, who've been named in the various press articles. So I don't think that's changed. I think Chris will be looking for a broker-friendly CEO. I don't think he won't get a broker-friendly CEO. I think obviously brokers are intrinsically important to the market. But yeah, I mean, it's how long is a piece of string? You know, how long is it going to take to find somebody or put somebody in? I think they're probably waiting for Roxburgh, the new chairman, to come in, and he wants to have somebody there. He may well want to have John Neal as a kind of advisor to him to give him the handover. But I don't know. Those are just random thoughts, but it's still a bit limbo-esque, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think everything feels like it's on pause until that new leader's in place, because there's so much hanging off it. So a watching brief on that, I think. So let's move on. So Ben, I just want you to talk a little bit about this article that I saw. Well, it was on Slipcase, but City AM, AI and hybrid patterns set to determine the future of work. And I thought it was a really interesting article because it kind of highlighted three areas based on a survey, I think done by LinkedIn. So it must be a pretty decent and robust survey. You might want to comment on that. But some of the reasons why I guess we're seeing a kind of uncertainty about the future of work, as they put it here. So the first thing, kind of the rising costs. So they've highlighted here that the recent rise in national insurance and minimum wage has really made AI and technology investment seem a lot more attractive. And also, if you couple that with some of the developments with those technologies that we've seen, and they seem to be rapidly developing and getting better and better, that you can see that organizations may be looking at saying, well, rather than expanding the workforce, why don't we invest in some technology which may help our existing workforce deliver the products and services that we're trying to in a more streamlined and efficient way. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think the UK, obviously, with the NI rise, that was becomes a part of the discourse. I just had some this morning, interesting, a supplier just came across my desk saying they're raising their prices by whatever. And I know we've kind of said, oh, well, we'll probably therefore not do as much work on that basis. We'll just cut it back a little bit. So that's just an example, I think, of a small example of how you work in business. So you tend to say, well, yeah, look, we've got a bit of extra cost here. So that pushes you to a point where you go, well, let's have a look at it. AI is there. It's all been talked about. Let's look at that too. And for this stuff, which is quite dull, if it's working at the dull end of things, the administrative end of things, then you can see why there could be definite benefits to really looking into AI and saying we'll invest in it, because presumably in AI, the AI may well offset the NI, which isn't going to go away any time soon.
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, I should have a there.
Yeah. Good.
It's slow off the mark.
I'll warn you next time. I'm going to do one of those.
Yeah, very good. So I think that is quite interesting. I haven't seen that kind of before, kind of that dynamic being pushed in.
It is interesting because you've got lots. We know it's a high priority, this whole flexible hybrid working, what's going on with it. It's interesting how things kind of drop into that space and then start to push it in one direction or another. And I know from some work that we've just done, it's not really out yet, but a sneak preview is that flexi working is very popular as a choice element when people are going to a new place to work. So this is, if that's right, and I think it probably is, then you probably will in future have to have some sort of flexible working policy. And again, that pushes the organization to say, well, okay, so what do we do? Does that include AI? So lots of things in the mix, I suppose, really, in this kind of whole area of working.
Yeah. And you've already touched on it. So employees push against office mandates, which is interesting, which it's kind of ebbs and flows. You can read research and reports that say, on the one hand, people are coming back to the office because they want to network, progress their careers, and they see it as a route to kind of, as I say, kind of progression. But then you on the other hand, there's this kind of work-life balance, and I think maybe it's the diktat, that some organizations are putting in place. You have to come into the office 4 days a week, 5 days a week, whatever it is, that people are pushing back against.
Yeah, I think the problem is that people can make a rational, reasonable argument that I could work home 2 days a week or 3 days a week or whatever. It's very hard then. If another employer says, actually, that's very reasonable and our productivity doesn't drop, as we've covered in another show, then they're going to go, fine, we'll use that as a way of becoming more appealing to talent. And if the office over the street is saying you have to come in 5 days a week, they might lose out on that. It will all work itself out in time, but that's where we are at the moment. I think there is my sense is the argument is more towards flexible working becoming the norm than not. Yeah,
it's interesting. I remember when we first talked about this, straight after lockdown, or as we were getting back to some kind of normality following COVID. I mean, one of the question marks around kind of cities and the work from home phenomenon was all the kind of, the sandwich shops and the small, those ecosystem of different, closed shop, independent shop, all that kind of stuff that relied on people coming into a hub and working in offices, is put under threat. And I think one of the things in the article is around Sadiq Khan expressing concern again about the knock-on effect of people not being being there and just hollowing out cities. So yeah, it's interesting, and it's multi-dimensional and quite fluid. It's interesting. Good. Okay.
Well, multi-dimensional and fluid.
Yeah, I mean,
get
all the buzzwords in, mate.
That is, yeah.
That's good, isn't it? Right, let's move on. Okay. Let us talk about MGAs, Ben.
Yeah. They're all the rage.
They are all the rage. So this article. This article, again, I think it was from Business Insurance, talking about kind of how MGAs are taking over the insurance game. And it's really interesting because the whole space around delegated authority is getting so much attention right now because it's such a lucrative and growing sector of the market. But it does pose a number of strategic questions for the industry, I think, because as that sector grows, you can't, it isn't just growing and there's no downside to it. There are other parts of the market that are kind of being squeezed. And yeah, it's just it's a fascinating time. It's we got a DA strategy day coming up, and I've been absolutely blown away by how popular it's been. And I know you're doing some research into MGAs as well, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fastest growing part of the market is outsourcing, basically, which this is. So there's a cost to it, obviously. The carrier that uses an MGA, there's a cost because they have to pay them some money for distributing their product or whatever they do. And but the offsetting of that, of course, is that MGAs are often technologically quite good, and they are productive, and sometimes they've even got good salespeople and marketing capability as well, and can take certain products to the market that maybe the insurer doesn't. So there's lots of new things in a way that have come in, highlighting, I guess, that big institutional insurers are just not very nimble, and therefore now that this isn't just a play of when you're in a certain part of the cycle in the market. This is now becoming a permanent fixture in the market and growing quite rapidly. It's also an area where I guess you have kind of more entrepreneurial people or talent wanting to go into, because you don't have to be regulated in the same way as an insurer. There are lower barriers to entry. You don't have to have capital requirements, etc. So again, it's a place where people with ideas can flourish. So I think it is, as you say, something that might be changing the structure of the industry. An interesting thing, I think we'll be looking at some of this, is do talented people in the industry now want to go? Do they prefer to go and work for these types of organizations, or do they want to stay in the big companies, the big insurers? Because if they start to vote with their feet and insurers lose talent, that's a problem for those insurers. And insurers end up saying, well, perhaps we will hire effectively kind of administrative talent as opposed to entrepreneurial sales talent. So it could change in all sorts of different ways, but it is very interesting. The one thing I would say is that be careful when we use this phrase MGAs, because there are all sorts of service company types of operation, which are just basically ways of sticking some capital out into a subset of your organization to move it more efficiently in a financial sense. So sometimes these figures get a bit overblown. What we really should be defining better is what this segment is. I think it's beset by jargon, most of which is totally unhelpful. But equally, MGA is hardly a sexy descriptor, is it? It's kind of, well, you might find it sexy, but I don't. So it's you kind of feel like you want to call it something that tells you what it is a bit better and communicate this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you about that. It's gone down the route of the normal London market thing where they go, right, we've got one thing. Let's give it an umbrella term, and then let's split it out in lots of different things, and then give each different thing a different acronym to mean the same thing. It's just, for God's sake.
And given that they're selling things, they give them the least sexy titles or acronyms you can imagine, and then so you hobble them before you've even started.
Yeah. I think the other thing to say about talent is what they do in the purest sense is allow talented individuals a route to set up their own organizations, not even to go out and work for an established one. They can actually go out and say, I will take, my innovation that I've been thinking about for a few years and try it out. So, there's a number of kind of different pressures on it. It's really interesting. And one, I think we'll be able to report back on more after April, after the event, but also once you've got your research out as well, Ben. I think that'd be
absolutely.
Great, really
it would be very interesting.
Good. Okay, let's talk about brands, Ben. So we had your launch brand event last week, last Thursday, which was great. I love going to those marketing brand events because it kind of gets me out of my ops and IT bubble.
Yeah, you realise that's where the fun is.
That's where the fun is. Yeah, I got crikey, darn all these years.
The cool kids are not at your conferences. There's the cool, creative, arty types all there. Yeah,
that's it. And my band, they just got to implement it all and make it all happen. Anyway, let's not get into an argument about that. What I found really interesting was how organizations are now focusing on brand rather than marketing as a route to building competitive advantage. And I'm sure you'll talk a bit more about this. But let's lead off with the Itsu article that you saw in the FT.
Yeah, so this was just a link really back to the thing we were just talking about in terms of productivity and AI and things, and it's just an interesting touch point really, where Itsu has got something like 83 stores and only one human service point, because they've moved over to these computer screens where you go and enter in what you're buying, which personally I find terrible, dreadful. But then I'm not alone, because lots of other people think that too. So the Itsu boss has said that they've probably gone too far and adopted too quickly. So, and customers generally see these as you having to put more effort in to buy the product, and they don't like that. And also that they're being asked to do something which the company is not giving them any discount for or whatever. So I think they don't, and they're not seen generally at the customer point as being all that useful. So it feels like an important thing that's happening elsewhere in the supermarket industry, which we've talked about before, which is self-service only goes so far and it reaches then diminishing returns. And the other thing that's coming out about sometimes with this is people buy less when they are, either using these screens or they can buy less because the screens may not work or whatever. But also, when people are standing in queues, the same things happen. People buy less because they think I'll get through quicker and stuff like that. So you can have unintended consequences that impact you commercially from this. But Itsu is moving back to some blended approach with tills and these screens. And I think these are sort of stories that are quite relevant to the insurance industry, because we can go too far with some things. So I'm thinking about things like claims portals, and I'm thinking about chatbots and all of the things that the industry is looking at, and indeed e-trading and anything else. Now, they're all good things intrinsically, but I think we need to start looking at where is the customer in all of this? Where is the experience of that customer? And are we losing something as we become more and more reliant on the technology? The place where Itsu uses it, and others are too in the industry because of tight margins in the restaurant industry, is in the back. Well, the restaurant, the cookery place, the kitchen. That's the word. The cookery place, also known as the kitchen of the takeaway joint, and they're using robots there. So they've got sushi making robots and all that, and that's apparently well, it can be kind of forced in. You know, you can sack people in there, and there's no customers to moan about it, and it's productive. So really, again, the lesson perhaps for the industry is where you've got nice hidden pieces of technology that create an efficiency. That might be the place that's going to work really, really well. But as soon as you start to get out into that customer domain, be very careful about what you're doing with this, because it could turn people off completely.
Yeah. So I had a similar story this week. So I was called by my energy company, which I love, EDF. And they rang me and I took the call, and they said, I'm giving you a call because you are on the standard tariff. And if we think if you move, you could get a cheaper rate. So I was going, oh, right. Okay. I'll entertain this. Brilliant. I just need to go through some security checks with you. I was going, okay. I don't know why, but anyway, I mean, you've got my number. You've called me, whatever. So anyway, I told them my name. They wanted the first line of the address and the postcode. Anyway, the first line of address didn't match to whatever was on their system. I was going, but you've called me.
Yeah.
You're speaking to me.
It was a scam.
No, they just did. And I was just going, okay, fine. I mean, how could, even if it was a scam, Ben, I mean, what are they going to take off me? What, some electric?
No, I don't know. No.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
So for them to call me and then put me through some security check, I don't know what security they would. Anyway, we got through it by me giving them the date of birth and the postcode. And they went, right, do you mind holding the line while I go away and just check out this address thing? I went, no. 5 minutes later, I put the phone down because I was on hold. I was just going, this is utter madness. And then they send through the bill. This is my bill. And you go, okay, I've got to decipher this. This is the summary of the bill.
Yeah.
And they go, right, so I paid a bit in December, and then I've paid more in February. And down here in the middle section, it says, if you could save 78 quid a year by switching, or you could save 107. You could. Now, the thing about this is you could. And then you get into the detail of the bill and you go, how the hell am I supposed to understand all that?
Yeah.
And the problem arises is that they say you can save something and you can, and you feel as a customer, oh, great, you're going to save me something. But actually, when you get into the detail of that stuff, because I've got solar panels in the mix, then actually they've taken a small section of my consumption, aggregated it over the year and said, actually, you, based on this consumption, you'll be having this. Therefore, we'll save you this. But actually, during the summer, I don't use any energy. Yeah. So it's like a complete disjoint between what they understand of me as a customer. They don't understand me. They don't know I'm talking to me, even though they called me on my phone. Secondly, they don't know my usage, even though they do know my usage. And then thirdly, they offer me something that I can't understand because it's so complicated.
I mean, nobody understands this. Nobody's ever understood it. Nobody understands phone tariffs. Nobody understands what we used to have when it was photocopier tariffs. Nobody understands, all of these things have always been like business by algorithm. And the truth is, most people go, look, I'll look at the overall bill. If it isn't too bad, and or if I can switch and get it slightly cheaper, I might do that. But you're right. There's no way. That is basically a computer, and then a finance person has looked at it and go, look at this. If X% of people took this up, we'd make more money, or we'd whatever. I mean, no organization is going to offer you a saving for no reason. That doesn't happen in business. There's got to be a quid pro quo somewhere that you do whatever, sign the direct debit or whatever. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's ludicrous, and it is a good example of where the technology has taken over, and someone will be telling somebody at the board, we've got this brilliant scheme and the computer has to do it, and we had no people involved, and it's cost us nothing, and we've made this much money and all that, and they'll believe him or her, and that will be the next great thing, except the reality is it won't work.
Yeah.
So yes, it's
a cautionary tale, I think, isn't it?
Yes, most of that stuff.
Yeah, and it's a cautionary tale for our industry that we've got to have a focus on customer, on outcomes, on communication,
and value, really. Yeah,
and the value. Yeah,
the value is, that's the key, isn't it? Even if it's a commodity, tell them what the value is.
Indeed, and this gets us on to the brand.
Yeah,
your brand launch. Why don't we play the video, Ben, and then we'll come back and have a chat about the evening and what came out of it.
Hello, who are you? What do you do?
Hi, I'm Ashley Stockwell. I head up the brand and marketing team at Convex.
Great. Nice to see you, Ashley. What was your key takeouts from the brand launch tonight?
I think it's great to get the sort of brand and marketing community together from the London market. I think from this particular event, I think it's the realisation for people that we are all consumers, and learning some lessons from consumer brands and bringing those ideas into B2B marketing actually is absolutely the right thing to do. And it's not about advertising as such, it's about building your brand.
Yeah, and we've been at this a long time in this market, so it's quite key, isn't it? I think it's quite exciting that's changing, really, to be honest. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, further up the table next year.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Cheers. Hiya. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Charlie Evans. I'm head of market research at Beasley.
Brilliant. Hi, Charlie. This is Jeremy,
Jeremy.
my friend. So what were your key takeaways from the brand launch tonight?
I think it's really encouraging that the market is really beginning to take brand and marketing seriously, and hopefully we're leading the charge and everyone wants to follow us, but I think it's just super great to see that they're really thinking about brand as something that's worth investing in, and genuinely starting to see the value that it can bring.
Brilliant. So I was going to say you'd be even further on next year, but you're number one, so what's going to happen next year? Just more competition?
I know. Well, competition's good. It'll keep us working harder, and we've always got to be different. So there's more to come. So hopefully we'll be there still next year. But we're not sitting on our laurels. That's for sure.
And you've got some great campaigns coming up. It's going to be really, really interesting. Brilliant. Great to see you, Charlie.
Thank you. Good
see you soon.
Bye.
What I like about that video is my role in it.
Right.
I got the drinks and didn't say anything. So
there are some where you do say some. There's more, aren't there?
I know. It's no, it was a really good event, and it was just well. Do you want to just explain what it was all about and what Insure Index and how?
Insure Index is our kind of publishing arm, and it's a byproduct of a lot of the research that we and others do, where it showcases the brands, and that's kind of basically what it is. But that actually brings in a lot of different things, so service, quality measures, the brands themselves, creative advertising, talent, and so on. It all kind of fits into that under that thing, and it's basically all the stuff that people market themselves on these days, even the products. And so we every year do a brand league table, if you like, a ranking of all the brands in London, and we do it in other areas as well, but this one is kind of our flagship, and it looks at brands from two perspectives. One is how well known are they, how aware are brokers of those brands, because that we know impacts their choice and their selection, and also the share of the business in the market. Because again, you can't ignore the size and scale of businesses as they grow. That will be impacting their brand. So those two measures, if you like, one's a kind of hard measure of the size and scale and the share, and the other is the share of mind, if you like, as well. And then so we show the top 20, and that's the launch, and that was about 45 or so CMOs all came along, double what we had last year, showing how important it's becoming.
Yeah. Shall we show the top 10 brands?
Yeah, why not?
If I had a drum roll, I'd do a drum roll, but
yeah,
I haven't. So here we go. Ready? So there we are. So number 1, Beazley. As the video was just talking about. What was it, Ben? Is there anything that you'd point to that?
Yeah. Beazley has been doing a lot of what we call ATL, above the line advertising. So what people will know as outdoor advertising, posters at various events, stuff that you can see, you can see publicly. And that is a very good way of promoting a brand, because it's largely just about the name awareness, really. You just really want to be aware of it. And Beazley has been doing this for many years now, and it's why it's third year now at the top there. And by the way, it's just pushed out some fantastic results as well on the financial side. Now, are those two linked? I will argue, yes, they absolutely are. And so are many other marketing people. They have a really kind of positive momentum now, but they're not the only ones. This is pretty competitive now. So AXA XL, you can see they are growing. So is AIG in the London market. So Chubb, Convex has come up. That's a relatively new brand, as we know, but still working really well. And Ash, you saw there talking about some of the things they talked on the night about their pop-up pub that they did in Leadenhall Market, which everybody was aware of and knew. And we were talking about creativity and ideas when you engaged with people, get people engaged, and the human elements of that. And that pop-up pub, for example, was all about the human element. What do people like doing? Go to a pub, have something to drink, have food, and they played on that, and it was clever. So these are the top 10, and they're all working. And there's another, there's many more players all trying to build brands, and that's what is happening. So more money is being spent. I think we estimate at least 200 million in the market now, if you look across brokers, and not even necessarily including MGAs in that. But there's a lot being spent on marketing, and it's increasing, and it's becoming a bit of an arms race.
And I think one of the takeaways that I certainly took back to the office was around the stats that organizations were 7 times more likely to place business. I think that's the stat that you'd found when doing some of the research.
Yeah, and it's supported by other markets. So B2B has not generally been a market where there's been much advertising or marketing, promotional brand building that's been any good. It's all been what they describe as a sea of sameness or Me Too type stuff. Very rational, very much about product things. And the shift now is into, what has tended to happen in B2B is that you do a bit of sales stuff, performance stuff. Here's our product and it costs this. And by the way, here's our brand. You try and do those two things together, but that doesn't work very well. So the idea of brand building is it's showmanship. It's very broad. It just gives you you engage with it, so you engage with the idea of it and the humanity and whatever else, the empathy stuff and so on. And the name, of course, and that's what you remember. And then you might focus in on the product. So we talked in the night about the balance between that sort of broad brand building type stuff, showmanship, if you like, where you create engagement, and the very focused type of left brain stuff, which is here's the product and this is the rate and this is what it does. And it's very easy now to see which ads are doing that well and which aren't. So the science is coming on leaps and bounds in this market. Hence, we're able to find stats like the one you just mentioned, because they are proving the point. And it takes a little while to build a brand, and you have to keep investing. And it's not so easy to measure in the first few years because it's slow and it builds and builds. But once it starts to build, it creates a real momentum.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you very much for the invite to that Ben. I certainly enjoyed it. It was, as I say, it was great to get out of my space into more of a marketing conversation. But what I took away from it was actually all of the functions are coming together. We often talk about the siloed nature of our industry, and I think they are starting to be broken down, because in order to create that brand, you need to have kind of an internal brand that is accepted and being championed by the people, because otherwise you don't have an external brand that's going to hold water.
I mean, you've got to some extent, your brand is built inside out from your people, particularly when you've got people-based service. They need to be on board as well, and they promote it, of course, through what they deliver. So that is a very big part of brand building, really, and of course it's about attracting talent and so on and so forth. But then the rest of it really is outside in, where you're looking at what is the value that we're going to deliver ultimately to the customer, and that is really again where the industry is moving towards incrementally.
Good, excellent, right? Thank you very much, Ben. As always, for the conversation. Okay, what are you doing this weekend, Ben? Anything good?
Well, quite exciting, because my daughter has been traveling around Asia and she's back on Sunday, so I'll get to see her again, which will be brilliant. And we'll have a Sunday roast. I think that's what she wants.
Excellent. Good call. Well, it's going to be beautiful weather, so I think we'll be out and about.
Yeah.
Doing some things in the spring sunshine, daffodils et al., and all that kind of stuff. So, whatever you're doing.
Snow on Wednesday.
What?
No, it's going to snow on Wednesday, apparently.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So don't put your coats and your jumpers away just yet, everybody.
There we are. Great tip there from Ben about cold weather and clothing.
Yes. We can do weather forecasts as well.
Whatever you're doing this weekend, have a great time, and we will be back next week. Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Bye all.